Hey guys, Extra here, and we are back on CarX Street for another video. First and foremost, I just want to say a huge thank you to all the support I got on my last upload, the beginner tips and tricks. I have loved seeing all the comments roll in and being able to help you guys out and replying to you all. I love seeing that people are using my builds and my cars and all my tunes. I've been playing this game a lot over the past year, and I've got a lot of knowledge, so the fact that I can put some of that knowledge into YouTube and help out all the new players who are coming across from Xbox, that's huge, and honestly, it makes me feel great. I mostly just had these videos up on my channel to help my friends out and share builds and tunes with friends and Discord communities that I'm a part of for this game. So the fact that I now have this platform to be able to help out all you new players, and seeing all the comments roll in especially, that means a lot to me. So thank you guys for all the support. And following on from that, we're going to be covering some more tips and tricks today. Specifically, tips and tricks on how to drive fast in CarX Street. So since the Xbox release came out, we haven't had any of the time attack or leaderboard events in general showing up on the map. But from what I've heard, that was because obviously we've been playing the game for a long time on PC, and it would be a little bit unfair for us to be competing against the new Xbox players on leaderboards, considering that they've only just gotten the game and haven't had any time to get any cars or learn how the game works just yet. But now that the game's been out for close to a week now, I have a sneaking suspicion that these events are going to start to come back. Because they really can't leave them out for too long, and there's lots of really good rewards that would help the Xbox players out on these events. You get money, street coins, mystery cars, pre-built cars with upgrades on them already, all kinds of good stuff. So without further ado, let's just jump into these tips. Let's stop dilly-dallying around and let's teach you how to drive fast in CarX Street. All right, let's go. So the first tip that I want to share with you guys is gutter driving. And if you've watched Initial D, that's going to sound very familiar because it's the exact same thing and it works in CarX Street. And it's so strong that if you aren't using it, you're not on the racing line. The time attack I've got up in the background here was one of the most competitive time attacks I've had in this game, and it's the perfect example of how this can be so strong. The ghost I'm chasing is Dribbles, who is arguably one of the fastest drivers that's been on CarX Street. And you can see clear as day every time he gets a gutter drop and I don't, how much his ghost pulls away, and every time I get a gutter drop and he misses it, how much I catch up. It gives you so much cornering grip and speed, so much exit speed, and normally it's just a shorter line to take anyway, so you should be aiming for it regardless. But you need to be using and abusing the gutters if you want to be competitive in this game. This trick is also applicable across the entire map, whether it's on the highways up against the barriers, on the speedway, during club racing in the city, doing toge. These gutter drops are everywhere. So for the next tip, we're actually going to dive into the settings menu here to look for one specific setting, and that is going to be the gearbox modes. If you run an automatic gearbox, or if you run a manual one even with the automatic clutch, yes, you can still use the clutch, but that doesn't matter. When you're shifting gears, you are at mercy of the game's shifting speed. And that's the shifting speed that decreases when you upgrade the clutch, and it can get pretty good, but it's still nowhere near as good as having a manual clutch. When you set this to manual, you can change gears as fast as you can press the buttons, which I think goes without saying is a huge advantage, because you can change gears way faster than the 0.16 seconds or wherever it is with the T50S gearbox with the prototype clutch. And on top of that, you also get better launches. So the way this game works when you're doing events and you're on the start line, the car's actually in neutral when you're revving. So when the car goes to take off, that counts as a gear shift that's going to take the 0.16 or the 0.2 or the 0.25 seconds or whatever it is that is set in your tuning shop, that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. You lose close to half a second just on the start line if you don't have this set up as manual. So I know for some of you it might take a bit of getting used to, but I can assure you it is worth the risk and worth the learning to use the manual clutch. So please do this. It's important. And moving on perfectly from that last tip, this next one is going to be related to the actual timing of your gear shifts. I've picked the WRX here because it's got the most exaggerated power graph of any car I've got. And you can see that the peak torque is around that 3.5 to 4,000 RPM range, and kind of starts dipping off at around 5,000. What this means is if you're shifting gear in this car at the rev limiter, you're not utilizing the peak power band of this motor. So I'll show you a clip here from a time attack I've done in this car, and without nitrous, I was shifting gears between 6,000 and 7,000 RPM. And this is the same on every single motor in this game. There is a sweet spot for where you want to shift the gears, and you can get a pretty good idea for it based on the power graph for the motor. I know for the SR20s, it's around 8,200 to 8,500 if you have the Ultimate ECU. And you'll have to experiment based on what engine and car you're using. And there's a way you can tell if you've done it, because the car will actually get a little speed boost forward. And I'll see if I can show you in a clip here of what that actually looks like. But it's very, very obvious. And that's how you know that you've got the perfect shift point for your car, because you will actually gain speed just from the gear shift. For the next tip, we are back in the tuning shop here, specifically looking at tire pressures. If you've looked at any of my Touge or Time Attack builds, you're going to have noticed this, but we run maximum tire pressures. So 3 bar front and rear, and all of the other top players in this game do the same thing. And that is because you get so much grip from differential, downforce, and suspension tuning that the tires just don't matter for handling grip. They're actually a bit more predictable when you have them on max pressure anyway, but the main objective from doing this is to reduce rolling resistance. And what that does is it increases our acceleration and our top speed. And the benefits you get from this top speed and acceleration increase far outweighs any benefit you'd get from turning ability and extra grip from having this lowered. So always set this to max and then fiddle with the rest of your tune to get the grip that you desire. And if you can't get that grip, I promise you that you're doing something wrong, because the tires have so much grip. You definitely don't need to touch this. Following on from that, staying within the tuning shop, our next little tip here, you'll notice that in a lot of my Time Attack builds, even in some of my Touge builds, I'm running no or very little rear aerodynamics. So the front aerodynamics are very, very important in this game, as the handling is inherently understeery. But the rear aerodynamics, it is not worth taking the air resistance hit or the grip you gain from the rear aero. Some cars you do need to run some aerodynamics on the back, and some cars to be honest, some tracks, it's faster to run maximum rear aero, but for the vast majority, you want to run the least amount of aerodynamics possible to minimize your air resistance and then gain that grip that you've lost in the aero in other areas. This is going to make the car harder to drive, but as is the case in a lot of games, especially considering this is Time Attack, the harder to drive, generally the cars are going to be faster. And because it's a Time Attack setting, you can just keep restarting. It doesn't matter if the car is hard to drive, because all you need is that one good time. So run as little aerodynamics as possible on the back. Max the front out. The front's worth it, but the back, not so much. All right, so next tip I've got for you here is smooth steering. Now, you've probably heard of this in games like Trackmania, if you've ever played that. Unfortunately, you can't really do this on a keyboard, but you're on a wheel or you're on a controller, you can take advantage of this. You can see in this Time Attack here in the background, sorry it's muted, but this is a C1 class Time Attack, and you can see that I'm taking corners as wide and as smooth as possible. This really helps you preserve momentum, as well as if you're steering, you get less acceleration and less top speed, as well as nitrous is way better if you're going in a straight line, almost to the point where you don't want to use it when you're turning at all. But if you can get your smooth steering down to where you're only turning between that like 1 and 5-6% range, you can get away with using the nitrous. And this technique is even more effective on time attacks because you get a bigger advantage if you're doing this on like grass and dirt, which all the time attacks in this game have crazy shortcuts that normally mean going across grass and dirt. So if you can get this smooth steering down, it's honestly one of the techniques that I think has given me the biggest advantage in the time attacks in this game and why I've always placed as well as I do. So really hone this in, and if you can get this down, most people can't, and you'll instantly jump up so many places on the leaderboards. It's crazy how good this is. I've got no idea how many tips there's been in this video, but I've got one last one for you here. This is probably the one I use the most out of anything. I use it in every single discipline of driving in this game, except for drifting, and that's engine braking. So the engine braking in this game is very, very strong. And if you've seen any of my videos before, any of my tunes, you'd probably notice how often I shift all the way down to first gear or down to a gear lower than what I'm taking the corner in, and then I shift back up. And that is to utilize engine braking as much as possible. So the first benefit of engine braking is how much later you can get onto the brakes for a corner, because the engine braking helps your car slow down so much. And the way you really use this is when you're coming up to a corner, say you're approaching a hairpin or a tight corner, like here, for example, shift down an extra gear than what you think you would need to be in for the corner. Let the car hit the rev limiter, and that is going to help slow the car down whilst you're braking, and then shift up to go back around the corner. The other thing that this is really good for is rotation. So especially in all-wheel drive cars, it is pretty hard to get them to oversteer on corner entry. You have a fast tune on. It's just the way that the physics are in this game, and the meta lends itself to that. If you shift down into first gear, it will help swing the back of the car out through something called shift locking, which is kind of similar to pulling a handbrake, except when you pull the handbrake, you lose all your RPM. You have to put the clutch in, and you're actually you're putting the handbrake on, which slows you down a lot. Whereas the rotation you get from shift locking or going all the way down to first gear keeps your momentum up and keeps a lot of speed whilst also giving you that rotation at the same time. It's almost like doing like an inertia flick, but without having to do that. You can kind of hold your line, just shift down really quickly, let the car rotate, shift up and power out. This is so good that some of my friends even bind first gear to a button on their controller, so they don't even have to press down all the gears. They just put the clutch in, hit one button that puts them all the way down to first gear, and then they engine brake and then shift back up and go around the corner. And it makes you so much faster. It's hard to get used to, and it used to be way stronger than it is now, but if you can get this down, you will outbrake everybody on the Touge. And that's not an exaggeration. You can brake so much later than everyone else. All right, there it is. Those are my tips on how to be a really fast driver in CarX Street. Look, I've been using these over the last year or so to compete in time attacks, and I don't think there's a time attack that I've been in that I haven't gotten a top 10 or even like a top 5 time. I've gotten basically every mystery car you can get in this game. Not that I really keep them, to be honest with you, but some of these tips I have kept a secret. I haven't actually shared them until now, so I hope you use them, and I hope I see lots and lots of new names on the time attack leaderboards when they come out, and I hope there's some new fast drivers getting around, because with this game getting as quiet as it was, the competition was really starting to die down, and it wasn't really that fun competing on the leaderboards anymore, except for a few close friends. So there you go, there you have it. Do with these what you will, and I hope you drive fast. Thank you guys, see ya.